Greetings and salutations from your friendly neighborhood RyVo yet again. What you're about to see is the second episode of I'm RyVo, Who the Hell Are You, released back in 2021. Now, unlike my first interview, which was with my friend Jane Doe, Drew Hamilton is someone I've known for quite a few years. In fact, I'd consider him one of my closest friends in the local music scene. During the time of this interview, I believe this was around the time or just before his band Vigilis had released their 5-song EP, Beacon, which, by the way, is a really great EP. You can find it on Bandcamp. I'll have the link below. And it was kind of surprising how much of Drew's past I was completely oblivious to, and we definitely had a lot to talk about. It was a wonderful interview. I believe this was one of the longer episodes that I've done so far. Now, again, as I mentioned in the last episode's video, this one was plagued with minor technical difficulties as well. Again, I tried to stream this and then later planned to edit it to put up on YouTube. Well, during the course of streaming, while I was playing one of Drew's music videos, my screen crashed and I was in absolute panic. Zoom is still running, but my screen went black and I couldn't touch anything. I was about ready to text him and say, look, go ahead and interview yourself. I'll be right there. But we got through it. Everything was fine. And I think this was a really good video. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy this one. And here's the second episode of I'm RyVo, Who the Hell Are You? Well, we are live, my friend. Let me do this here. Pin. I will pin me. We are live. Hello. Welcome again to another edition of I'm RyVo, Who the Hell Are You? We had fun last week, for those of you who tuned in, and I'm looking forward to this week because I get to talk and visit. I get to talk and tell stories with a very, very dear friend of mine who's also one of my favorite musicians and artists in the neighborhood. Ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor. Give a big online round of applause to my friend, Drew Hamilton, frontman, guitarist, multi-stringist of the rock band Vigilis. Drew, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. Thank you very much. And how are you?
Doing all right. We're almost out of the woods with this whole lockdown thing. I just got vaccinated last week. Doing okay,
Yeah, good.
Didn't turn green.
But
I didn't get any super soldier serum. I was really pissed off about that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So I guess let's begin. Let's promote your band a little bit here. We got some music videos to look at, and I'm going to open up with one of them right now. So we're going to look at, I guess this is the first of the music videos for this new release. This is a Vigilis tune called This New Devilry. Let's take a look.
We're sold, everyone, every way. Unless you're in the club, you have no say. Hell no. I'm writhe in the sheets of mud, watching dreams turning gray into blood. I'm staying up. Let them dig this bed, or serve these ones who've signed away my head. Justify it, son. They're keeping warm on a uniform in the front. No, don't you sigh. So keep up, step up and add it up. You will be dead. Don't swim too near the crooked thread. They're not your friend, but pretend to be and obligate you once they bait you. This paper claims your fame is guaranteed till you start to bleed. See all the people slipping out of the slipping out of the do you see all the people slipping out of the well, I'm wide, I'm staying up, staying up, staying up. Stepping up.
Well, tell us a little bit about that video. I understand that, well, one of your creative consultants, I think she helped make the video, is a mutual friend, Sevgi Sugun. Did I say that her last name correctly?
Sungun.
Sungun, sorry.
Sungun, yeah.
Okay.
Or you could call it, you say sun gun, you know, if you want to say it. You want to say it in American. Sun gun.
Okay.
Sungun, I believe is how you pronounce it.
All right.
She's that's Turkish. She's she's from Germany. She's born in Germany. So her background is kind of back and forth. She's her parents I believe live in Turkey now.
All right.
But yeah, her family is Turkish.
All right. Well, talk about the video. What was the process like when you wrote the song? Did you already envision how the visual was going to be? Or
yeah, that's a loaded question. Okay, so that's the song. That song is in fact the sort of the very beginning of the whole project. And so it was written a long time ago. It was written, I want to say sometime in 2012. And it essentially is kind of, you know, there are people seeing that video, those that are kind of more of a literal type personality. They ask me if it's about suicide and that kind of thing. And it's really, you know, that kind of, the door is kind of wide open. I just sort of took a situation and threw that in there as a potential, but it's really kind of, I would say, inspired by some of the stuff of the writer Philip Dick. So like if you read like Transmigration of Timothy Archer, or more popular Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is Blade Runner. That's where that film came from.
Yeah.
You know, there's like
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's he's got a zillion quotes, but the one that that's stuck with me the most is, just because something bears the aspect of inevitable, one should not therefore go along with it willingly. And so I think that's essentially the kind of the energy that goes behind what the song is, because there's a lot of stuff in there that has to do with I think certainly the if you want to call it the middle class, or the visible middle class, or the lower, whatever, people that are just ordinary everyday types that kind of go through stuff in silence and so forth, and just sort of there being kind of a brick wall in front of them in a way, but also being told that that's what it is, or being lured into something that isn't that's being
well, let's go back a bit. Let's
okay.
talk about the superhero origin story. So where are you from originally?
Okay, so let's see. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from the original 13 colonies, right?
Okay.
So from the state of Connecticut,
right on.
The state, and so basically, I was born in sort of right outside of New York City, and about a half an hour. And most of my childhood, I guess, memories is around that city. I spent a lot of time in that city. I lived in that city for a while, and so
right.
Both of my parents were very connected. Both were. One was a student there, and the other ended up working there for a very long period of time. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth, and I guess I'm like a typical. You're asking me a loaded question, so I don't want to ramble on, about. But if you grow up around New York City, you're used to certain things. I grew up with certain sports teams and certain sort of artistic things that were related, and I had was lucky to have parents that were both interested in. They were very well rounded.
Yeah.
And so I got to, I saw a fair share of games, different of different teams and stuff, and that was a lot of fun as a kid, because you're learning about competition, which is immense, and also then connected to the to music there, to ballet and all this stuff.
Right on.
But again, that's a loaded question. It's a very, is anything specific you were curious about, or it's hard because it's easy.
Well, I just want to know a little bit about your upbringing, and what I was going to do was kind of build into. This is what we did with my last interview, and this is probably going to be hopefully a staple of future interviews.
Okay.
You're an artist, and at some point in your life, early in your life, you had to have heard some album, some song that made you go, "Okay, I got to do that." So what was that for you?
I remember your guest last week. It was really cool. They were really cool. I think you said the same thing about an aha moment. Was that right?
Exactly, and the aha moment. Thank you. Yes,
the aha moment.
That's it. Yep.
Okay, so the aha moment. Yeah. I have them all the time. So that's really impossible, and that probably explains why I'm spread really thin over a lot of things. But
sure.
But getting from the creative aspect, there were two incidents I think that were probably that stick out most. One was the time that I almost electrocuted myself, and the other one was I was going to receive the ultimate penalty from school. Right, that was the two things of having the fear instilled. So the electrocution was
that was not one I expected.
Yeah, so that has to do with so I was told to leave the room. I was told to leave the room because there was guests over and stuff, and so my mother wanted to tell them a story about me. They wanted to talk about me. That was why. And so I lingered. I would just hide off and listen and stuff. And she said that what I caught him doing? I caught him, in the playroom with a turntable plugged into the wall and a bucket of water and Play-Doh, trying to make it a pottery wheel. I was 4 years old. So,
Right.
so that was so she taught me doing that. But that, and then being, being on the floor with boxes and pans and stuff. And my grandmother, she goes, here, this is how it goes. This is how it goes. Play that. And so I beat around on that, and I remember all of this. So
sure, yeah.
So so I was definitely, they were paying attention to that. And then school was a complete failure, because it came during, my parents didn't stay together. And so it was ugly.
You and I have that in common.
So yeah, a lot of people, and so and it was a progressive school. And so you could go at your own rate. You could go at your own rate, basically, right? And so, it was hard enough trying not to think about what was going on at home, because there wasn't really any. It was just chaos, and so they had that, and then you had a lot of teachers, a couple of them that were really rough. Some of them were questionable, and it's not that I'm against necessarily teachers being disciplinary. They should be, but they shouldn't be raising your children. Their job is to to show you and open your mind to things, and then your discipline and so forth comes through from your parents. And so, but they were both split and trying to find they're trying to navigate how are they going to handle all this without a second person.
We relate there because, again, same thing. Now, I was 11 when my parents divorced, but the same thing with school. Now, I had the luxury of having like one or two teachers that were a great influence on my life, but a lot of them were either disciplinarian or just outright not really that interested in being a teacher. They just, they were just annoyed. And I'm kind of wondering if you're the same way. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but I'm kind of wondering if you're the same way where for me, I sought intellectual things long after school, like long after I left school. Like now I have an interest in science. Now I have an interest in all these different subjects that I wouldn't have had interest in school because some boring ass person was teaching it to me. Whereas, you go at your own pace, you find stuff that intrigues your mind and so on and so forth. I mean, did you have the same experience? Would you say?
Well, I think that comes from having a need, I think, or a necessity. It's important. You've got to have it, or you discover a passion. But I'll come back to that. With teachers, that's what saved me, actually, and it wasn't. It wasn't the academic teachers, because I have an extremely academic family, and I come from a teaching family, like grandparents, physics teacher, mathematics, Latin, English, so everybody's pretty, Rhodes Scholar, one of them. So it's a very, very, competitive. They're very competitive. So humor and all that kind of stuff is really like, sometimes it can get certain parts of the family when they group together. And I mean the whole family. Some of them will laugh, and some of them are just they're too like buried in their intellect, to get the humor and so forth. But the teachers, there were two teachers that were very hugely instrumental, and because I was a class clown. I had the way through school was to be funny, and so you wouldn't get picked on, because there's lots of kids that were like that. But it's also athletic. Could do, it was athletic. I could do the stuff that they had in music class, and I could do the stuff that they had in art class. And I say do the stuff because that's how I saw it. It was like I could do all the stuff, and so I didn't have a problem fitting in. The kids would pick me usually second or third on their team, and so it was. I had enough athletic ability to be of value to the kids,
right,
but also to the boys, because it was just boys, and it was separated, still. And the other thing was, the teachers were just they had their, they were all very much into their own thing, because it was a progressive school. You could go at your own pace and so forth. And a lot of smart kids would go and do their things, and I would follow my friends. Some of them were really smart, and I'd follow them to their class, and I'd just be like, I don't want to do this. you know. And so I purposely I was like not going to engage. And eventually, after enough times in the hallway, I got used to sitting in the hallway a lot for getting in trouble. But the art teacher, I think, was the first one who kind of figured something out. And you know, she had an assignment. We had a really exceptional art room. You know, it was this like thing that it'd be illegal to have now. I mean, we had I remember a big table of like these beautiful poster paints of all, you know, these big cans, coffee cans of poster paints of just the most crazy colors you could possibly imagine: indigo, blue, cobalts, you know, all the right ones. And then they had we had wood burning kits. We had linoleum razors to cut like, you know, really cool looking mixed media stuff. And, you know, we had a pottery wheel, a real one, legit one. So I'd always stand and look at that thing in awe and watch the upperclassmen.
Yeah.
And so I got big into the clay thing. And then we had a kiln. We actually had a kiln at the school.
Oh, no kidding.
Like I would go near that room and and Miss Howden was like, wait for me every time, because, you know, there'd been burns in there. A lot of people would get burned, but we actually had a kiln. We're able to do full on, you know, stuff. And so she had an assignment a couple times, and I remember kids gathering on and watching me do it. And she said, okay, you know, I'm going to put this, started putting stuff up of mine in the hallway. And that, all the stuff that I ever did stayed in the hallway until that school was ripped down. Now it's a parking lot, but it stayed throughout its entire, you know, 20 years later, you know. And she started to have me as an assistant. I would sit next to her and help the kids kind of like figure out what the program was for the day. All right, here's what the project is, and blah blah blah. And she gave me this nickname. She called me Kiddo, you know, which I thought was great. You know, I was a big deal, you know. So Kiddo.
Yeah.
But then, you know, that was fine. So I had the drawing thing, and I would draw in the back of my homework assignments. And yeah, I drew my teacher and really disgusting stuff and really funny stuff and show it to my friends, and they'd start laughing. And I pretend like I was interested in what was being told on the board. And, you know, George Carlin has a thing about
of course. Yeah.
You know, he'd be the only person left because everybody was laughing. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
absolutely.
same thing, you know. And then came the music part, and this was going on in my house because my sister, you know, and my mother and my father and my uncle, one of my uncles he's toured all over. He's played at Carnegie Hall, you know, he's toured all over the world like in a trio. He's a concert violinist, but he taught orchestra for a long time in French, studied at the Sorbonne. He's hardcore classical musician, and he you know, so we had music at home. But it was a lot of it was singing. There was just a lot of singing going on, and it was with my mother and my sister. I remember most of the time. And so I didn't want to get involved with that, you know, because it was kind of their thing. But then, you know, when the music class came, we had this, you wouldn't believe the instruments they had. They had like these bell, like xylophones. And I remember outside the lunchroom, they had kids playing these bells and stuff. And they were trying to figure out like Christmas carols and stuff. So it was like this cacophony of different bells. Right. You know, and you'd make your way to the music room, and you would find these guitars on the wall, and there were the two music rooms, and they had like they had risers for choirs and all the piano in each and stuff. And so one of the rooms was led by this woman. Her name was Mrs. Carroll, and she was Priscilla Carroll. I don't even know if she's still alive, but she would get up and play these songs, you know, on her guitar and a 12-string. She would bang away in a 12-string, and the whole class would be singing along. And it was tough in that age, you know. We're talking like second grade, you know, and so no one's voice is cracked or anything, right? And so everyone's singing in unison, you know. And for me, it was just awkward because I felt like I was, you know, I don't know, you know, I'm like what you call you know, I was a typical guy. I'm a typical guy, and I was born like that, you know, like typical, you know, kid, you know, boy going outside, getting his hands dirty and everything, you know, catching frogs in the backyard, fishing like crazy, and bringing frogs up to the guests, you know, at the house. You know, my dad would tell me to go catch these big frogs, and I'd show them to the guests, you know, just crazy stuff, you know, and you know, playing with matches, and modeling glue, crazy, and then you know, so I couldn't like necessarily sit still and be and be like, I had a lot of energy, and as you can see, and so singing with the girls and stuff for me was like, I'm singing with the girls, you know. I just couldn't, you know, for me at that, you know, it was just, it was hard. So I called it, you know, it's like, it's like, that's singing's for girls. Why? You know, it was my, it was like, it was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. Right.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to do it. And one day they had this, she put up this movie of the Danse Macabre, you know, it's on Sense, right? You know, it's it's a, so it's a movie about this big, you know, skeleton with a violin. I'm like, now I can relate to that. A skeleton playing a violin and a bunch of things coming out of the grave. Oh, I'm all over it. So
I can
I'm
relate
gonna
to
watch this, you know. So they put this video up, and she goes, okay, I want you all to raise your hand when you hear the theme come in. And so, you know, we hear the theme and la la la, and then as the class continued, you know, gradually it was less and less students as the, you know, the music got more elaborate, you know. Eventually it was just me and Miss Carol, and then just me. And then she started looking at me. I'm like, here it is again. And so there's modulations and, you know, retrogrades and all kinds of stuff going on in there. Yeah. And she gave me this look, like this death look. Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, see me after class. And I'm like, oh, shit. Well, I just blew this. I'm probably going to the office. So
you weren't supposed to like it.
So I'm dead. Yeah, I'm like, I'm done. My mom's going to get a call. I'm screwed. You know, and she'd already gotten a call. I digress, because of me drawing a picture, you know, from this workbook called The Red Balloon. One of the chapters is about, you know, drawing picture. You know, you drew a picture of what you thought the red balloon looked like. It was language arts, right?
Of course.
We had to post them on the wall, and everyone had these beautiful red balloons, except for one, which was purple with horns and a pitchfork and, you know, smoke coming out and stuff. I got sent home for that one.
Oh, geez.
And then this one. So I'm waiting for the same thing. I'm like, all right, I'm screwed. I'm a troubled kid, obviously. And so she holds me back, and I'm waiting to go to the office. She's like, come in here. I'm like walking in there real slow. It's like the longest walk to the piano. She says, stand here. She starts playing this. She says, sing this back. So I sung it back. She play this, that, note after note. And I sung it back, and she goes, you have absolute pitch. And you know, and which is not completely accurate. It's passive, absolute. And that was, she said, you have absolute and you have absolute passive. Passive means you're able to adjust to the microtonal shifts of groups. If you have the curse, which is the kind you can't adjust and you're out of tune, and you feel out of tune, and it's extremely awkward. So there are two kinds. And so she goes, you have to, I'm calling your mother, you need to play an instrument. And so I'm like, oh God, you know. And then eventually, they forced me into it. I didn't, you know, it wasn't something that like, I didn't just say, oh, I want to do this, you know. But so yeah, it was like recorder, trumpet, clarinet, you know, all these wind instruments. I'm like, Rocky, yeah, I can play the Rocky theme on trumpet, great. I can play the cat theme on Peter, you know, from Peter and the Wolf, like a little Prokofiev. I know that. But eventually, it just was like, I don't like the fact that I can't talk, as you can tell.
Of course.
You know, if I can't, you know, because it's in my mouth all the time, I'm not into it. And so I was like, screw it. While that was happening, there was the ukulele. My mom had a baritone uke, both my mother and my sister, and they were kind of strumming away, thumbing it. They learned to strum with their thumb, right?
Okay.
And so, so I would watch them, but I didn't want to get involved. But that was their kind of time, you know. And so eventually, I picked my mom's up and started figuring it out, you know. And a baritone's tuned like a guitar. It's the same thing. It's just minus the sixth and the fifth string.
Yeah.
And I found, you know, one of my favorite jazz guitar players learned the same way, you know. And so it was like, all right, well, figure it out. And eventually it was like the two of us playing the instruments and my mom joining us. And that's what we did instead of playing video games. We had video games, obviously, you know, but we didn't do that. We you know, instead of playing a board game, we would sing and multiple nights a week. And eventually we toured, you know. But
I would have preferred that. I honestly would have preferred that. I mean, you know, and I just real quick, I want to segue back to the wind instruments, because you brought up a memory for me. One of the first instruments I attempted when I was younger was, for some reason, I had it in me that I wanted to play the flute. I don't know why, but when I was in like second or third grade or something like that, I talked my parents into getting me a flute, and they got me this really expensive flute, which they later had to sell back because I took a couple flute lessons. I think I learned half of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That's about all I could manage. But see, then years later, I heard Jethro Tull, and I'm like, well, what the hell? You know, if I had been exposed to this early on, I would have stuck with the fucking flute. I didn't know you could do this shit with it, you know. But okay, so I wanna segue real quick here because we want to get to the music stuff. So right there from your story, you were telling me about listening to odd music that scared some of the class away, and again, I can relate to that. Because I've always loved the oddball stuff. I think we have that in common. But now I want to segue to a band that I know has been a big influence on you and has definitely been a big influence on me. Tell me how you discovered Pink Floyd.
Well, I had let's see. I knew about them, and I knew about them just because of I had my mom, you know, she had got boyfriends and stuff, and one of the guys that she was with had sons, and they were older than I was, like way older than me, you know, probably like 10 years, and so they were into the stuff, and so I remember seeing the giant wall posters and stuff.
Oh, sure.
You know, and they would have like, you know, the light show and then the words and stuff like that.
Of course.
They weren't the first band on my kind of list, but I discovered them because I was hanging out with a kid who was he was kind of an outlaw, you know, in school, and he was you know, he had a lot of girlfriends and stuff, you know. He was kind of a well-liked dude, and you know, he fancied himself a singer, I remember. And he wasn't really that good of a singer, but because I played in a little group with him and a couple of friends, one of which was a guy I played football with, of all things. But, he was this kid who, like, you know, was this was like they were getting high, you know, and he was like a bunch of he was hanging out with that crowd, and you know, I had friends in all the crowds. I had nerds, and you know, I had jocks and stuff. I knew everybody. I didn't stick to anybody, you know. I was never a cliquey type of person, and this was this kind of the guys. These were the troubled ones, you know, the ones that were all the smokers, and the ones that would talk about getting stoned after class or skipping school or whatever. And so I went over to his house one night, you know, and I saw like his, you know, he was a single parent, you know, and you know, mom not really around and stuff, and he would kind of offer me, you know, do you want to get high and all that? And I'd be like, no, I'm not yet. You know, I kind of put it off because I wasn't there. You know, I wasn't there yet. Yeah. But I remember he put on, we turned the lights out. Turn the lights out, and he put on some like lava lamp or some shit, you know. And can you say that? That's one of the 7 words you're not allowed to. And it was the Wall, and it wasn't the we didn't start from the beginning. It was the Wall, and I remember hearing the Helicopters, and I'd never heard of Helicopters in in a recording before, to that level, to that, like the volume level being so the dynamic range. That's what really got me. Yeah. I mean, I would say more so than just about anything was just the dynamic range of everything, the intensity of it. Yeah. So, you know, and so that really turned me on to it, and it made me, after hearing that and then sort of walking, tiptoeing through it for a second, made me start to pay attention to lyrics.
For the very first time that album in particular, you know, I often look at The Wall as the quintessential concept album. Like, seriously, if I think about making a concept album, it's like, okay, that's the go-to album, because I think Roger Waters, when he composed that, really made a perfect album. I can't think of one weak track on there. Everything adds to the overall story. And I love the fact that when they made the movie, a lot of people didn't get the movie. I got it perfectly. The guy is going insane. He's got so much troubled baggage in his head, and you're going insane with him. That's the story. And every song adds to the neurological disorder. and it's just so beautifully written. And I want to just share my own experiences with Pink Floyd. I kind of went to it backwards because early on, my father had heard the Roger Waters solo album Radio Chaos, and yeah, I loved that album growing up. And first of all, looking back at some of those albums, particularly Roger Waters stuff, there was always a lot of hidden jokes in the background. If you ever listen to the TVs or the radios or whatever going on, there was always something either really quotable or just kind of funny. And in particularly, in particularly Radio Chaos.
Yep.
But then later on, I heard Dark Side of the Moon, and believe it or not, that kind of scared the crap out of me when I first heard it because I was not used to the auditory nightmare arrangement that they did. Like when you hear that scream of that woman, and it goes into it. And then you have that On the Run segment where they, took they took a sequencer and sped it up, and then created this whole like future thing, like where you hear like these, what sounds like almost like dinosaurs and monsters and stuff chasing after you. But it's like sometime later, I was just really fascinated by the audio, just the scenery it created in your head. And of course, and then the next album I heard was The Wall, and same thing. And then later on, I heard Animals and Wish You Were Here. So I was really attracted to just the nature of the way they composed the stuff, of the way they put everything together. So let me tie that in to the origins of Vigilis. Now, this is kind of a weird question. Were you always playing progressive rock, or were you always playing rock? I mean, who are your biggest influences with your own style of music?
That's again another loaded question.
Give me like a top 5.
I can give you the 5 things that were probably the most some of the strongest stuff in my childhood. But again, I had a record collection that I inherited, or was a hand-me-down. And in my family, and this is, I don't know why this is, but the generations in my family are vast. Like my aunt and my mother and her, they're 12 or 13 years apart, each of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So my grandmother had children like into her like mid to late 40s. She was like, okay. So they're and her husband, my eldest aunt's husband, was 12 years older than her. If you can get that one. So we had, so I had a record collection that spanned like, you wouldn't believe the vinyl that we had. And it wasn't like a massive amount, but the ones that we did have were amazing. So I think the stuff that I really, you've got, again, it's vocal stuff, you can go vocal, you've got, the instrumental stuff, and then you have, and its own thing is orchestral.
I definitely
whole thing is a different.
I definitely hear that. Yeah.
And orchestral was first with me. Yeah. Before anything, but if we're gonna talk about something that probably if we're talking like recordings, like records and stuff, I can think of like the ones like. So I immediately latched on to the vocal stuff, like really good vocals. So I had a lot of Beach Boys, Bee Gees.
Yes.
I had and Brian Wilson in particular, and his ability for melody. Let's see, Beach Boys, Simon and Garfunkel. Okay, this is all in the collection.
There you go. Yeah,
I'm flipping through it.
Yeah.
Then I had what else? Beach Boys, Bee Gees. Cat Stevens for sure. It's a record called Catch a Bullet 4.
Okay.
That one. I want to think that's probably the first public choice I ever made to hearing a song. Like I paid to hear a song. You go and you play. You can go to a bar and play that. Where now it's a bar. So wherever there was a place where you could pick a song and it was in a public place. That was the first song I ever chose to be played in public. Was a song called "Sitting" by Carole King.
Oh yeah.
I had Carole King and then and Joni Mitchell, and then so those were, and certainly Eagles, and they were not really I love them, but I never owned any of their records, but I never turned them off when they came on. So, but these were all like kind of songwriter stuff, folk based to some degree, and then production, like Beach Boys and Barry Gibb, man. I mean, look out. Okay, so those guys and their ability to work, and then of course, my stepbrother and I, like, we were close, and we had a record his father lent us called News of the World.
Okay.
You know that record?
Got
a big giant robot in the front. Sounds
familiar.
With bloody rock musicians being crushed in its fingers. It's got songs called "We Are the Champions" and yeah. So we had so that was another. So it was Queen.
I gotta share a story about Queen. Now I should mention to our listeners, our viewers, Drew and I have known each other for a number of years, and we were both semi-regulars at the Hotel Utah open mic located here in San Francisco. Nowadays, it's being rendered as the Zoomta under our friend and host, Mr. Brendan Getzel. And so you brought up Queen. That's perfect. One of my favorite memories of you, first of all, I've told friends for a long time that you always had the male voice that I envy, because you can sing stuff that would make me faint. Brendan would do theme nights at the Utah. And I remember once he did a theme night of sing-along night. And just as the luck of the lottery draw for the open mic, you were a few performers ahead of me. And you engaged the entire audience in "We Are the Champions." And now you can belt that out. You can absolutely go toe-to-toe with Freddie Mercury on songs like that. Whereas I remember belting it out and feeling very hoarse afterwards and going, am I still going to be able to sing my song? Because you really got to have your vocal chops in place if you're doing Freddie Mercury. There's no other way to do it. You mentioned the Eagles as well. I remember one night I would do, you remember, I would do like any kind of song, whatever it occurred to me to do. I don't care. If it's a good song, I'll do it. And one night I did, I think I did "Take It Easy." It was a tribute to Glenn Frey because he had just passed away. And our friend, you remember Matt Herman, another great instrumentalist, by the way, Matt Herman. Matt Herman came up to me afterwards and said, "Look, I had a bad day and I hate the fucking Eagles." And I had no idea he was quoting Big Lebowski. So I felt really bad. Like, I'm sorry, man. Because I've had a couple friends say like, "Oh, I hate the Eagles, God." And I don't understand why. They're like the best, the vocals are great.
Yeah,
that's one of the great examples of vocal harmony to me. Other bands could harmonize like that.
Yeah. Again, man, I say them because I didn't have any of the records, but like, Seven Bridges Road.
Oh God, yes.
There's like
one of these nights. One of these nights
is killer. If you watch this documentary of them warming up backstage, when they're really hot and their work they're doing, they're singing Seven Bridges Road, and it's 5 of them, and they're unbelievable. And it's the beautiful acoustic room. They're just doing it right backstage. It's tight. But man, Eagles. I'm forgetting Doobie Brothers, man. Doobie Brothers.
Oh man, I love me some Doobie Brothers. Yeah, absolutely.
Michael McDonald, and then all of and Steely, all that stuff is 70s. I'm definitely, I had a 70s record collection. I wasn't old enough, really, or around really to know to be part of that. But I had that capsule. While everyone else was listening to something, more like up to date, I had all of these great, 70s records. And I had, Beatles. I'm not going to say I didn't say Beatles just because, it's typical. People will bring them up. And
again, that's a lot like me because again, my father had a huge record collection. He had like over 300, maybe even more records. Yeah. So records are fascinating to me. And I was always a step behind my generation because I love the older music. I thought it was so much more interesting. I love the Beatles and Clapton and the Dire Straits and, on all the bands you've mentioned.
Yeah. And then there's another, the one that doesn't get enough. I don't give it. And this particularly one record, and it's the Arrangers. So it was the Kids, but also the Arrangers, the Jackson 5.
Oh,
Jackson 5. Yes. I like, that would just set me on fire. There's a record called Looking Through the Window. That record, Looking Through the Windows.
Okay.
That, you know, that record and that cut, man, that one, I learned so much from just that one, you know, kind of arrangement and all this stuff. It's like a pulsating track of vocals and stuff, you know, and so
Yeah.
anything that had really good vocals, you know, was, you know, that was automatically on the, you know, the rotation, the personal
Yeah,
rotation.
well,
But
something the people take for granted about the Jacksons is they are really good musicians. Michael Jackson was a really good musician and songwriter, hands down.
yeah, well,
I
yeah,
mean, in
well,
addition
you
to
know,
being a great dancer, he was an incredible vocalist. He
yeah.
had,
Well, Jackie on bass, you know,
yeah.
those bass
But even
lines,
later when
man.
he worked with Quincy Jones, who was my man,
Yeah,
you know, Quincy Jones,
yeah.
they came out with some great stuff. So listen, I want to segue a little bit. Let's go a little forward in time. How did you form Vigilis? First of all, why the name Vigilis?
The song was called that originally. So this new devilry this video we just saw was initially called that.
Oh wow.
Because it's
Okay.
about, you know, that the word means you know, fireman, you know, or means watchman or lookout
Okay.
or paying attention, you know, that's what that word means. And so yeah, so the whole idea of, you know, the idea of something bearing the aspect of inevitable, you know, you don't just go along with it willingly. It's like about, I said, I'm going to name this song that, you know, paying attention to that. But when I met with, you know, I had this riff, you know, and I was kind of messing around with it, and I had come up with this arrangement. You know, the riff came to me in what it was like lightning, you know, because I had, you know, the guitar part, you know, the whole the idea of being a guitar player, you know, was something that I kind of had sort of not divorced myself from, but I got away from it because, you know, I had been just that for a long time, and I had been in other projects and stuff, and when I was living in New York City and so forth, and the project that, you know, I was involved with had a progressive vibe to it, and we did like 3-part harmony, and I loved it. You know, I loved being able to have that kind of vocal thing going on, and I had not been able to find that, and often felt sort of involved in that it wasn't enough to just, you know, peer out and sing a little bit and then kind of play and whatnot. So you know, I've kept up with the whole guitar thing. I mean, I got plenty of guitar players that have been extremely influential, but I wanted to kind of go and do the song, just start writing songs, you know, just kind of get into the song. You know, what's it? How do I divorce myself? How can I kind of be free again and not be thinking about like what I'm going to play over what, you know, you know, chord scale and chord melody and voice leading and all these kind of things out the door, you know. Don't think about like Charlie Parker. Don't think about, you know.
Oh, I see.
Holdsworth
You're not necessarily thinking about the structure. You're thinking about, okay, this sounds good. Let's do this.
You know, this is not a platform for you to you know, shred. You know, it's not. I mean, I've listened to a fair share of that stuff early on. Got into it. Had those amazing times of, you know, I can list, you know, 6 guitar players immediately that come to mind.
Yeah.
But this was you know, this was more like, how do I, you know, so the whole like move to playing the acoustic again, and that was one thing I sort of hung on to, and I was at a really bad time in, you know, life, you know, like I think I kind of got, and I think everybody has these, well, not everybody, but, you know, you get I got sort of zeroed out, you know. I put when you get let down, you know, you put your confidence in somebody, and, you know, you're involved with some people or involved with the person perhaps.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. So it's just like life completely went, you know, it was kind of spawned off that, and really didn't know what direction. So it was like, well, what's one thing that has always been, as what stayed? What's the one thing that still has meaning? And so I was like, well, I'm gonna take a crack at this and just kind of see what feels right. And, you know, I had been around some songwriters, you know, when I was in New York, and I knew a couple of like ones that actually had songs that were, you know, big ones. Right. And I kind of watched how they do it, you know, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to live in those shoes for a little while and see what comes up. And so the riff kind of was a culmination of just seeing what physically, you know, I could grasp at that moment, but not think about it, you know, try to just go for like reach into the air and just kind of see what's there. And then, you know, if you get something that comes out, you know, great. And it was something that was just not anything that I'd ever, you know, felt connected to before, you know. And so I was like, this is something I can work with. All right. And then, you know, I hadn't made an arrangement of it. And then I brought the arrangement into my job, which has been I've been a music instructor for a while. And, you know, there's people that have come and gone, and drummers and so forth. And there's one of them that was right across the hall from me. And, you know, we got to talking eventually. And then I went to see him play a couple times. Mm-hmm. And I started to say, hey, you know, maybe check out this. I made this demo. I'll be interested to hear what your opinion is of it, you know? And so I think I had gone to see like 2 or 3 of his shows. There's a video of this up, by the way.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But anyway, he's like, so I handed him the demo, and he comes back and he goes, yeah, I think I remember he checked it out, and I got a phone call when I was making dinner with my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And he said, hey man, I heard your demo and listened to it. And I've been playing it several times, because every time I hear it, I hear something new. And, you know, so I'm hearing something different every time I hear it. And I said, well, cool, that's the idea. And he says, yeah, so that, you know, that band I was with, you know, this band I was telling you about that I was having problems with, I just left them. I just quit them. You go, what would you be interested in coming down to the rehearsal space of where I'm at? You know, I was like, sure. So that was sort of how it happened. You know, it wasn't like, you know, he played, Ronnie plays he played in a ska band for a long time. And so they were really diverse, you know, he had horn players. And so what I appreciated about that was, you know, these quick changes and like sort of sensitivity to this section, and then get really loud here. And, you know, the dynamic range of them, you know, was really good. And the other was, you know, a heavier type of project and stuff. So he could hit hard, you know, like really hard. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. And so that, you know, became, you know, the sort of the building blocks. And we just started off as an acoustic project. I think I probably ended up meeting you. It was just he and I, it was jumping around with a cajon and an acoustic guitar, and, you know, playing stuff. And we would just do, you know, little places, like we would go to the Plow, and, you know, I think we did Utah a couple of times. And eventually, you know, we ran into this guy over at the Starry Plow, you know, he was the guy that was, you know, he was our first bass player. His name's Joe. Super cool, Joe Hickey.
Joe Hickey, yeah.
And he's, you know,
we've gotten to be good friends. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a really sweet guy, and really good songwriter, and he was and sings, and so that's a big deal, you know, and that's been an issue with us for a long time.
That's definitely, like with my own band, that's been a big issue, because you know, nothing against the other guys, it's just I find great musicians, but I find very few people that I can actually sing with.
Yeah. The singing part is really tough, you know, and it's, to me, it's like, you know, if there's anything that's going to make you employable, you know, you need to not only just be good at an instrument, or be able to get your way around an instrument or two, but you had better be able to sing. You know, if you just, all you do is your one instrument, you know, it's not that you're worthless, but you're one-dimensional, you know, in a way. You can't really, you know, you've only got one, you can serve only one purpose. But if you can double in something else, you know, it makes it fun and more interesting. You know?
And by the way, just to say a word about Ronnie, as you mentioned, your band member, I remember this was sometime after I already knew you pretty well. I remember chatting with him, and I could have sworn I was talking to your brother. You know, he just about Ronnie Johnson, Ronnie, your bandmate, Ronnie.
You could have sworn that you heard what?
I could have sworn that I was talking to your brother. You know,
because my brother,
because his personality kind of reminded me a lot of you. You know, like you guys are brothers. You know,
and we were juvenile.
Yeah, but you're I don't know. You guys are similar in wisdom and similar in wit in many ways. But
right on, man. Yeah,
I can see the chemistry with you two. You know, as band members.
Yeah, I mean, we you know, that if it's just the brass tacks is just, you know, trying to get stuff to float, try to get it to float, which, try to have a sense of humor as much as possible,
Now,
and
speaking of getting things floating, I wanted to mention something. So that first song we were talking about, the one that was originally called Vigilis.
yeah,
I do remember you playing that a number of times at the Utah and just kind of building that up. And I was always just in awe of your songwriting style when I heard that stuff. This album or EP, I'm going to call it an album. Screw it. It's 5 songs to me. That's an album.
okay.
Beacon, which, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with it, check out Vigilis on Bandcamp. Beacon is their latest work. You can also find videos of some of the songs, as we played earlier, on YouTube. It's a phenomenal album. It's extremely well crafted. And I want to say this has been a couple years work for you, hasn't it? Because I remember you've been working on these recordings for quite some time.
Yeah, I kind of cut my teeth on this. I think, it was the kind of the way that things kind of worked out. It was, a lot of it was recorded in different places, and so it wasn't all in the same realm. It wasn't one studio, because I had a place in my apartment. I'm actually not in my apartment now. I'm at the fort. I put a little thing up about the fort, but
this didn't quite look like your bedroom. So
no, it's not my bedroom. My bedroom used to look like this, believe me. So yeah, but it started off there. The first sort of draft of this new Devilry. And that's the thing. Ronnie was saying, that song, it almost sounds like it should be named This New Devilry, and the band is more about the name Vigilis. That's sort of what it is, because a lot of it is just really, it started off, and it's changed quite a bit, but it's sort of started off as an observer, it's an observer in kind of that perspective. But the whole, the tracking of it, took place. We had to go to one location to do drums, which was fine, but I hate that aspect. I'd like to be able to have access to it myself. And then doing loud guitars, in an apartment is just really until they had IRs. I finally got like stuff where you can use impulse response from guitar cab and stuff. Those are okay. I still believe in miking your own stuff and doing it, getting it right, and knowing how to do it. You should be able to, and that's sort of where it came down to. And so the delay came from a couple of things. One was the one was just, okay, we got to work on this, and then we got to get shows. We got to work on this. We got to rehearse, get shows, get this recording, and one or the other. And it's always like, well, we don't have that demo, but we don't have that product that tells people what we are to get the show, but we need to get the show. We need to play, and back and forth. So that ironed itself out eventually. But eventually there were certain things in the recording itself that were problematic. And I found that out when I was able to step away. I said, okay, I finished it. I've got all the things in place, but I am not going to try to, I've tracked everything, got the arrangement, but I am not going to sit down and mix this. I'm too close to it. And there's been so much learning on it, and so much, there are a lot of mistakes that were made, by me, really ridiculous things. And so when I have a post-mortem a mile long, so I had somebody do it. And when I got a first draft from him, and this is a guy who's like, it was mixed by a guy named Brendan Decora, who is he's an engineer at East West Studios in LA. Okay. And so he's worked with like Foo Fighters and Steven Wilson and Tal Wilkenfeld.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah. So he was the assistant on The Raven That Refused to Sing, and he did some work on
you know who else was a producer on that was Alan Parsons.
Alan Parsons, yeah. I talked to him about that too. I met him not too long ago about it. He actually was telling me about Dark Side of the Moon. It was really neat.
Yeah.
But wow. So he sent me back. He would send me back these drafts, and we had this agreement and so forth. And it was like I had to make a spreadsheet of all of the notes and of different things that were there. And there were things like for example, the electric guitars. And this recording itself, it's got a lot of imperfections, fades being one, but it's got a lot of stuff that I'm, one day I may go back to it and try it again. But I had to retract some stuff, and and I'm glad that I had to go through that experience, and he showed me, here's what you got. And he's like, I can work with this. And I said, no, you're not going to work with that. That sounds like, and it's not your problem. It's not your fault. It's my fault. It sounds like shit. And so I had to go and, go back, and it was fine. Different instrument, different instrument, different pickups, and, better miking and all of that stuff. And eventually, I sent him that, and he was like, well, I can really work with these. His reaction to it was just night and day. And that's when stuff started to really, come in. And it took, this whole process. Most people will send stuff, out, and it's like, you get one or two revisions, and everyone's like, yeah, it's cool, but this had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of notes. And he said to me, he met with me, and he said, I really like the music. And I said, yeah, I noticed you worked with Steven. And he goes, yeah. He goes, what's your favorite record? He asked me. I said, I don't know. And I think at the time I said, because I had never really heard of him until you had mentioned it. You had pulled me aside one night after.
Yeah, my introduction to him was actually the album you mentioned, Raven That Refused to Sing. I walked into a Rasputin one day and heard this album playing and just went, oh my God, what is this? Yeah. And just to add another odd coincidence, one of my best friends, Gabriella, was a huge fan of the band Porcupine Tree.
Porcupine Tree, yeah.
And she had mentioned, he sounds like Porcupine Tree, and come to find out he was the main guy in Porcupine Tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the thing. And I remember that, I think Joe had brought up, or ex-bass player had brought up Porcupine Tree, but I had never heard of him, none of this stuff. So this was totally, and so he had asked me what Porcupine Tree record that I was into. And I said, and I just mentioned a Fear of a Blank Planet, I guess, because we were trying to get references. We were talking about reference mixes and what kind of kick drum we were looking for.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
A lot of stuff. And a lot of engineering stuff. And so we had a really, good conversation. And then it was just like months and months and months of revisions. And he was extremely patient, more patient than he's ever been, from what I understand with anybody. And I think, but he knew that it wasn't going to be like a set and forget, kind of thing, that each thing needed work. And, when I finally took it to mastering, we even found some things, that were a little funny with it. And so, and that you can only really hear that on an appropriate sound system. You need to hear it on a, like a full on three-way sound system. And once those were done, back to another draft. And finally, we got something that was, okay, let's put it down. Let's put it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but
now, so I'm curious about something though. I kind of understand in part, but why did you say that you were too close to it to mix it down yourself? Did you just feel like you feel like you just couldn't hear it right, or?
Well, it's a lot of that is as far as arrangement goes and stuff. I actually, I want to say I really rode Brendan, in a way, and I rode him hard, and I feel badly about it, but I had a very clear picture of what I was hoping to get, and he really delivered, I think, in better than just about anybody could, and under these circumstances of being remote, it's different. But just having to get levels. I mean, I gave him, was the arrangement and how the arrangement, levels and so forth, but, carving out certain things, carving out what instruments are going to be, providing the depth and the placement and all those kinds of things, how vocals, how up front are they, lead vocal, where is he positioning that lead vocal? Is it like a big giant, like Dave Grohl kind of large, sort of set back a little bit with the band sort of, or is it, is it got an echo on it and stuff? And I'm like, no, man, this is right in your face up front close, like it's like next to your ear. You can hear, that's where it should sit. And, so the placement of all these things really, that was a long process, and he really was extremely patient. I cannot say enough good things about him.
As you're describing the level of depth in his recordings, and I definitely hear it. Like when I heard that first track that we played the video of, and I listened to it on the album, I got images of one of my favorite prog rock albums. In fact, it's probably my favorite album of that band's, was Dream Theater's 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, which I think is their finest. I think that's their The Wall, and I definitely got feels of that album in what you were doing. And then also, in the dimension wise, you got me thinking of Pink Floyd again, going back to the song Money and the instrumental section, where you have one section that's totally reverbed out. It sounds like it's out in space. And all of a sudden we're all in a closet, just the, being right in your face kind of thing, and I love the way they were able to create these different dimensions within the music, within the sound, as you do as well. And I was going to just make a comment and say, like, so in a few years from now, when we get the deluxe edition of Beacon, are we going to have the Steven Wilson mix?
I think we'll have a mix. It'll probably, I'll go back to it eventually. I mean, I'm not, honestly, like this is really kind of, it's this album, this record or album or whatever, or EP, whatever you want to call it, is really kind of it's a snapshot in time, and it's meant as a sort of sonic history, because it really encompasses a certain period of time, because the project has really kind of taken a turn in a direction that's a little, it's not as I would say it's more of an sort of an allegorical kind of realm it's moving, and it's hugely inspired by the artist that I've been working with, and he's just engaging with him. I spoke to him not last week. I think we were on Skype for about 3.5 hours talking about everything, about not just the project, and about this next piece that we're working on right now, about life and all these wild things. And we've gotten quite close, and he's someone that I definitely have I have a sense of trust in him, that I've never really felt with a lot of people. He's one of these guys that I think Ronnie came across him, and he just said, "Hey, check this guy out." And I was like, that's I looked at, he had a bunch of stuff up, and he had this one section where he had like these digital paintings that he did, and there was one of them that was like, wow, that's something I'm really, I feel that, and I want to talk to this guy to see if we can get him to respond. And he comes back, and eventually we started talking, and it was just he and I talking aesthetics, and I had a piece of paper with words, and I took a picture of it and I sent it to him. And he just kind of it was like, here's a white room, here's your paints, get in there, I'll see you in a week. You know what I mean? And he's like that. And it's wonderful to work that way. You don't want to like ride people. I mean, I feel bad. I go back to Brendan, because he really, I know he felt me like, all right, controlling faders and all this kind of stuff, because, there were certain things that were slightly not audible, and that, they're just so subtle that the only person that really can mix that stuff is he's the closest thing you could probably get in terms of patience and skill to be able to reproduce what you got in your head. Yeah. But this artist's material, really what he was able to create for us, and through talking and stuff, inspired this whole whole new direction for what we're doing right now. And that's what I've been buried in, aside from the whole the non-musical or creative realm, which is this whatever semblance of business there is left. It's having to an equal amount of work in it.
I'm going to share a screen for just a second here. This is your Bandcamp page, which I'll share with everybody. Look at that! I love that album cover. That is such a beautiful cover. And
the artist's name is Message Henrik, and his page is Valp, VALP, Valp Now, one word.
Okay.
And he does a lot of stuff for music festivals, and he does the corporate stuff. This was like different though.
Yeah. So
he's killer.
So talk about the name. I'm just curious why the name Beacon.
Um,
Was there an intended central theme with the 5 songs, or was it
well,
just
I think yeah, generally speaking, uh, we it's not like it's not a said thing. It's just a done thing. It's like it's an unsaid motto, which is like there are plenty of groups and plenty of uh, projects, and I would call this a project. That have their tone is dark, and they kind of leave you dark,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
but this is not about there's always a shot. It's like that's kind of like there's always somewhere there's light, there's hope, there's despite there being a challenge or things not looking so peachy, there's always there's an uptick somewhere. And that I think that kind of I think we just kind of naturally do that, and so
Of course.
that seemed just seemed to be an ongoing thing. And so we kind of threw that idea out. And this thing on the front of that record is it's a symptom. It is a
Sure.
symptom. It's that is it's a story, but it's a symptom of things being out of sync. And so that's kind of where this project is headed, is towards it. So
Okay.
that's not the last time you're going to see the beacon, because it's got a much more significant meaning. It's sort of a long-term mascot, so to speak.
Yeah. There was an album title that always influenced me. It's first of all, it's amazing to me what an influence Jethro Tull has been on me personally. Just not just for the flute playing, but just for the music and for some of the ideas that Ian Anderson put into the band. And I remember thinking when I learned that their first album was called This Was, and learning what the meaning of that album was. Basically, the title meant to say, this is what we're doing right now, but we're not going to keep doing this. We're going to do something different. And sure enough, by the time of the next album, they lost their original guitar player because he wanted to do Chicago-style blues.
Yep.
And so he was Mick Abrams, and then they replaced him with Martin Barr. But that idea of being a bouncing ball or being kind of, Jethro Tull in a way was a revolving door. And so that's kind of how RyVo and the Revolving Door came about.
Yeah.
And I also want to talk about your logo. So now you've made some changes to your logo.
Well, the logo, originally was it's kind of it was a collaboration. Ryan and I were trying to come up with something that sort of signified it. And I think I had this idea as well, something that's watchful. And I thought it would be really cool if we had something that was, with a letter V, it's got that, but like an eye of some kind,
Right.
So I was like, what if we just did a couple of different, I had, a handful of different things. And Ryan was like, hey, but we could do that. Or what about a camera eye, kind of some kind of an aperture looking kind of thing. And so we sort of combined, the effort and thought, hey, let's throw these ideas at, a designer, just some random designer, and see what they come up with. And they actually kind of got sort of a semi cool, fragmented kind of aperture looking eye type thing, and they made our they sort of extracted this symbol or this text, and we extended the end. And eventually we did a modification to, you look at the current logo. I don't know if it's visible on the website or not. It might not be, but the actual it would be on Facebook. You'd probably find it. You'll see that it's slightly modded again. It's evolving, but it's a brand, I don't we kind of went back and forth, both of us, about whether or not to put it on the front of on the release. I was against it because I know how much time Valp took to put that art together.
Right, you don't want to slap a sticker on it. So.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't want to piss on arts.
You don't want to put a Trump. You don't want to put a Trump label. I'm kidding.
Whatever you want to call it. You know, I don't want to, you know, it's like I don't want to mark territory, so to speak, you know, and it doesn't make sense. But, you know, the argument was, well, you know, we want to have some form of branding or whatever. So we did some kind of a translucent, kind of have a happy medium. We kind of notice it, but it's not obvious. You know, what's really obvious, hopefully, is you're immediately looking at it. You know, and that was the thing. We had these perspectives that we were talking about initially, like what an album cover might look like, and we want to have. We kind of felt, you know, we want to be, you know, want to engage, you know, a listener. We want to engage a viewer. You know, make them look at it, make them stare into it. You know, and that's what it is. You're watching, you're paying attention. So it's all, you know, that all kind of connects, you know, it's all interconnected. So anyway,
here I've got a punched up image of the current logo. Sorry, my computer's a little slow, but yeah,
we still have some old school versions. Yeah, so there's, you know, it's been just sort of rounded and, you know, more personalized and whatnot.
I like the idea of the eye being, I like the V being kind of an iris opening out and the eye comes out of the iris kind of thing. It's a nice little effect.
And it's not a word, you know, it's a symbol, you know, as opposed to a word.
Oh, that's great.
And we didn't want to have like a, you know, it being like a symbol. If it's a symbol, then everybody knows. If we could find something that maybe one day, you know, everybody, when they see it, they know exactly what that is, who it is, or they see it and they go, what the hell is that? And, you know, oh, it's this, you know, I see, I get it. That was the idea, but we're not there yet.
So we're going to close out, but we're going to play your other video. And this is, now Quietly was the more recent one. Am I correct?
Yes. Well, actually, Quietly was the first video we shot.
Oh, okay.
Just as, you know, it was interesting. Our Sev was.
Uh-oh. What's going on? Drew? Still there? Uh-oh.
A former student, and I think she was about 8 or 9 in the shooting of it when her mom brought her, and her mom was really cool. They're from Italy. They're amazing people, sweet. And her kid was just a personality a mile wide. I mean, just the nicest young lady you ever meet, and really engaging, and just very. She's a super caring person for her age, extremely mature, and musical, and not afraid to get dirty. You know, she likes to get into it. You know, and so she was into the idea. So we started off doing photos and so forth, and eventually we brought her down to shoot her. And so a lot of the stuff was, we had to kind of, you know, we cut our teeth again on this video, figuring out what lighting was going to work and which wasn't. And, you know, just all trying to get the settings, and then wrote everything down and tried to base everything after that that was our sort of measuring stick to try to improve, because we're basically like a two-person team. I mean, Sev's the shooter. She's an extremely talented shooter.
Of course.
You know, that's what she does. You know, it's like you aim her at something. That's how I see it. I aim her at something and she can get it. Or, you know, if there's a screen nearby and she's getting the money shot, so she'll be like, hold still, I got something. And I'm like, all right. And sometimes we'll just improvise off each other on things. But she knows, she and I both watch enough, you know, we're both like junkies with film and directors and script and all that stuff. So with those two, you know, lists of things, you know, we have our what we don't want to do and what we really love, and then that's what we got.
Right on. As a result. Well, let's go ahead and play the video. This is Quietly. And I'm gonna...
Come to spoon the bed and assure you
Absolutely stunning. You know, I wanted to maybe mention something here too, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Hmm.
You know, when I listen to your music and when I think about the stuff I want to compose and the stuff that really inspires me, I think you and I both, and this kind of goes back again to the child, you know, the incident where you're listening to very strange music and you're intrigued while everybody else is running out the door. Um, what I like about what you do is that musically you're very adventurous. I don't think you care where the song goes. You feel it and then it goes there, or you let the song go where it will. You let the song sort of dictate where it's going to take you musically. And you know, I love the adventurous free spirit that you exude when you're playing your music, and I loved the visuals in that particular video where you're kind of demonic, and I love the very subtle touch of the spider being on the guitar and everything like that. Just so cool. But I'm
Oh,
wondering,
thanks, man. It's really
so,
nice of you.
so what do you feel about the musical adventurous spirit? Because you know, one thing that kind of annoys me with a lot of musicians, and I don't, you know, I'm not going to name names, but there's a lot of people that just seem very complacent in their art with just the mundane and with being simple.
Uh-huh.
Whereas you and I are two people that really want to expand, want to explore. We want to be explorers in our art. What do you feel about that, being an explorer in your art?
Um, well, I think, you know, you got to do what you love to do. You know, you have to like what you do. If you don't
Right.
like what you do and you feel like you're having to be something that you're not,
Yeah.
then I think that's where you run into problems. And it's very easy to, you know, and I guess, and I'm sure everybody has these, you know, where you're in your process and you think you want something that you know already exists, and then once you kind of you substitute it for the time being. At least that's sort of in my mind. That's how I see it, as placeholder, until you come across something that's personally you know, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a tough. It's. What was the question? I'm going off on a tangent.
No, it's
You
fine.
know why? You know why I'm going off on a tangent? This light is bothering me. Number one,
Oh yeah, no, go for it. Yeah.
and number
Be
two,
comfortable.
you mentioned the spider,
Yeah.
and I need to give credit.
Oh, the spider
Uh,
co-wrote the song?
no,
I'm just
not no. Well, certainly, you know, the video is all Sevgi. You know, that's like
yeah.
Sevgi's stuff. You know, I mean, that's Sevgi's, like, you know, that's her, what she's capable of. That's a little piece of what she's really capable of, and she doesn't even know that. But that spider is a black widow. That's a real one. We found it at the fort. It's a lot. You know, that we went looking for B-roll, which is, you know, just random stuff, you know, and we
Yeah,
found
yeah.
a black widow. I found this black one. I'm like, get over here, shoot this thing. It's like, this is a black widow. I saw it. I
Yeah.
looked at it,
Oh
you
my
know, I'm
God.
like, this thing has got, you know, all of there's the yellow, the red hourglass. And so
Yeah.
we got one, we got it to run, you know, so it was really, that was a whole,
Yeah.
that was really, that spider really helped us. But everything was with us. So your question again is about about,
About, you know, I what I love, again, this is what I love in your artistry. There's a sense of adventurousness in what
uh-huh,
you do. When I hear the music, I
uh-huh,
hear, you know, it's very, it takes you to another world, you know, and I really appreciate that quality in your music, and I think about a lot of good prog rock does that, where it just takes you to this other place,
uh-huh,
takes you to this other place, this other imaginary place that you just can't put into words, but the music
uh-huh,
obviously, you know, identifies everything. And
yeah,
you know, my overall thought is just I'd love to see more artists be adventurous with their art, get out of their
uh-huh,
comfort zone, do,
uh-huh,
you know, do something more interesting. You know, do some interesting. You know, again, your songs have very interesting time signatures, and that's something that I'm still trying to venture into because I like the idea of doing different time signatures rather than just 3/4 and 4/4, which after a
uh-huh,
while get kind of repetitive and boring. I remember once this is just one of the random covers we did. We had a friend asked us to back her up doing the Led Zeppelin song Tangerine.
mm-hmm,
And I remember while studying the song, most songs kind of have a pattern, you know, verse, chorus, verse, bridge, chorus, whatever have you. Tangerine almost didn't have a pattern. It just kind of, I think verse, chorus, verse, weird bridge, weird whatever, back to chorus. You know, and I found that interesting that, you know, it just had this kind of a, you know, different setup to it. And again, you know, the rhythm sections in your music are so different than anything else I've heard. You know, and again, you know, even though I know they weren't in your list earlier, but again, this is one of the things I loved about the band Gentle Giant, where they were very venturous, doing a lot more classical and oddball jazz stuff that most, you know, that more so than most commercial bands of the time would have done.
Sure.
And that's just my overall comment. It's just an observation about creativity and about being outside of your comfort zone. You know, that's definitely something I tried to push in my own stuff. And I see you're kind of like a bouncing ball. You're just kind of, you know, going whatever. And I bring this up, just a quick segue. I had a musician friend years ago that would kind of annoy me because every time he wrote a song, he would always need to describe it to me and brag about it. It's like, oh, it's going to be a great song. It's going to be in 7/4 time. It's going to have this and that. And then we're going to do this and this and this. And I'm going, dude, just play the damn song. Just play the damn song. I don't care. Show me what you're doing. You know, don't talk about it. Just do it. You know, and you're someone that just does it. You know, and I like the fact that you, I'm sure it's great for you that you're teamed up with people that are willing to kind of go along with you. You know, and particularly Ronnie Johnson, but also this the producer Brendan that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I suspect if I were in his shoes, I don't want to speak for him because I don't know the guy, but I suspect he was patient because he loved the material. You know, and that
would be a really, you know, it would. That's a nice thought to live in. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
I don't mean to brag on your behalf, but I'm just, you know.
I don't know. You know, he said really nice things and stuff, and I've you know, again, I have immense respect because I know what he's going through on a very, very basic level. As an engineer, I know all of the crazy stuff you have to deal with, how you gotta, you know, just troubleshooting and stuff, and understanding like phase and just the knowing your tools and knowing how to capture, and that's kind of, you know, and it's so much, that's so fun, and to have patience with somebody who's really who probably has that same sort of thing but is a little crazy or is not you. It's tough because you have your own sort of description in your mind of what you hear or method of how you're going to get something. Someone's got something else. And so you always have to be open to like someone else's methodology so you can learn. You constantly have to be spun. And so all of that culmination to that recording is really, so much of it is, it shows a time period, but it's also there's a lot learned in that. There were a lot of things that we went through, that we dealt with, you know, to get what we to get what we came up with. So I'm a, you know, and you have to like, you have to know yourself really well, to know when things are going to come. Okay, so like. When you're frustrated and so forth, you have to be ready. You try to trick yourself or remind yourself to be open for that one window, because usually when you're frustrated is the time when stuff shows up, you know, that's like you have an idea that shows up or whatever. But, you know, as far as people, your question initially was about like people kind of the comfort zone and so forth, you know, everybody's got their thing, you know, that they like want to do. And I think what's important is, you know, you don't want to lose touch with that, your comfort zone, because I think your comfort zone helps to sort of draw just any average Jane or Joe or whoever in to hear you. If you can meet them at one place they know, and then go,
Sure.
come with me, you know, take them on a little ride. That's really and
all I mean by leaving, I don't mean like abandoning your comfort zone. I'm just saying step out of it,
yeah,
step
yeah,
out of it and try
yeah, absolutely.
different things. Because I find, at least for me, if things are too the same, they become stagnant, and to me, they become boring.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll tell a quick story that I meant to tell earlier. We talked about this right before the broadcast. You have helped me out early on in my musical ideas. I remember the very first time I put a CD out as RyVo. It was back in 2012 or thereabouts, and it was called it was called "Well, That Shut 'Em Up."
Yep.
It was just a very loosely made CD. I mixed a bunch of songs down. They sounded okay. Put them on a CD. I had no idea what mastering was. And you and I think another one or two other friends of mine at the time mentioned you should master this. And I looked at it and I said, "What do you mean master? I don't know.
I'm already a master. What are you talking about?
Is it a submissive CD now? Am I going to put it in CD player and CD player's going to say no? I want to play Quincy Jones. I mean, is it? You know, but again, going back to fussing over the songs, as I know that we both do, because I've been in that experience. I've had that experience with my own material where you're just fussing over it nonstop. And as you mentioned earlier, you had to have a different set of ears on it because you were too close to it.
Yeah,
and I get and I understand that.
Uh-huh.
Having self-produced, some of my stuff and having to take a break from it because I'm so exhausted listening
Yeah.
to stuff over and over. And and I bring up the idea, if you're going to record a song, one thing I would definitely say to other artists is, you better goddamn love this song, because
Mhm.
you're going to be listening to it nonstop, fussing over it
Yeah.
for weeks, maybe months.
Yeah, and learn to let go of it. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is with recording and so forth, you're trying to depends on how deep you are into it, but you can obsess over the tone of things. I mean, there's a whole like realm. There's like tone. They're like tone blogs and so forth, or tone support groups and stuff, like from guitar tone to like
Yeah.
what microphone did you use on this, and I've been down those rabbit holes a bunch of times, is what mic is best for this and so forth, and it's just, oh, that mic sucks and this mic's great and all that, and which couldn't be more hogwash. It's how you use it and how what's your technique with it, and you can get something to work off of anything and surprise people. So there was a lot of obsessing in the beginning about trying to get something right, and you have to be you gotta go in a little heavy-handed and be willing to make your mistakes and stuff, because that's where all the growth and all of the goodies are. That's when you pick up, screwed that up, mastering in your case. You talk about, I knew nothing about mastering, and when you're a recording engineer, which is what I did on this, you have to and you've heard it so many damn times, it's really not you can get, the thing is, you can get to a point, and I will eventually, where I'm able to get that immediately. I know how to get that sound and stuff. I'll be able to pick it up. There's some things I can do very quickly. Some things take a lot more time. And then going to the mix phase is going to be easier. But if you've spent so much time, as a technician, making sure levels are right and your gain stagings are right and there's enough headroom and, all that stuff, you are so burnt on an idea that you really can't be objective in terms of, or you don't have the realm of what else is possible here, somebody that's never heard it.
And just to throw my own perspective into the mix here, I did that one. I did a first album with a full band, where I'm mixing and engineering everything myself. But thankfully, this time I was working with someone who knew how to master stuff, and he was the one who had to tell me repeatedly, there's something wrong with your drums and bass, that they're not, they're a little flat. And see, and what was frustrating to me is, you give yourself a certain timetable to finish all this stuff, and then you come across obstacles or problems that you don't have any clue how to fix. And then one thing I learned from that experience is, I don't have developed yet the producer engineer, or the engineer ear. the producer engineer ear, where you can hear how to mix the drums properly, you can hear how to mix the bass properly. And so it was such a relief. We recorded a single at Hyde Street Studios, and my friend Pamela Parker produced it, and it was
Yeah, I
such a
heard that
relief.
cut. She did a really good job on it, man.
Oh
It's one of the
God,
best sounding
shout out to
cuts.
Pamela Parker. But yeah, she did an amazing job, and I had heard her work with a previous band and thought to myself, okay, that's who I want to work with. I don't care what the cost is. That's who I want to work with. She's going to get the sound that I want on this piece. And I didn't have to ride her, in difference to what you were saying about Brendan. And I don't think her boyfriend would have appreciated that anyway. But no, I mean, seriously, she was on it and she came up with ideas that I wouldn't have thought of, and I love, sometimes in the studio, I love the spontaneity. Sometimes, like when I'm mixing stuff, I don't know how it needs to sound until I hear all the parts. And then I hear all the parts and go, okay, the bass could do this, maybe the guitar could do this over here, and so on and so forth. One thing that was a blessing when we made our EP recently was that, of course, we're in lockdown because of COVID-19 and all that other stuff. But all my bandmates sent me their tracks via email, or by Google Drive, and everybody had mastered their own tracks. They mixed and mastered their own tracks. So all I had to do was worry about volume and maybe throw in some reverb on the keyboards or something. But the band members all basically mastered their own tracks. All I had, it just became an easy job for me, just mixing everything down. It's like, okay, we've got the drums exactly how they need to be. We got the bass exactly. We got everything. Just send it to the guy, master it, get them back, good as gold. But it's just, but I bring it up because the fussing is such a nightmare that there was a time where, and I'll probably do this again with the next project, is to work with an actual producer, because you just don't want that headache with your own music. I just, for me, it creates a dissonance to the artwork, because you're just so tired of it. You're anxious to move on, but at the same time, you shouldn't have that attitude about it, because you're still promoting your stuff and all other stuff. So
well, an assistant helps, man. You have an assistant there who can
and
play.
it's great to have another ear. Let me ask you about something else real quick before we close out. So obviously we've all been going through lockdown, everything that's completely put a hold on our lives, so to speak, from 2020. We're kind of getting out of the woods now, but we're still recovering. First of all, what have you been doing to keep sane? Obviously, I know you've been working on these tracks, but what kind of things have you been doing just to kind of keep yourself sane, keep yourself going, motivated every day?
Wow. Well, let's see. I've been creative for certain. The trajectory of the project has shifted, and so I think that this played a role in it. The whole, because the record was ready to go in early last year, and I had to wait literally a year decided to wait until it was more of an opportune time where I thought we'd be making the clearing and so forth. So in sort of in that time frame, I ended up doing a lot of writing, not of necessarily music per se, but of a story. So that's as far as I'm going, but that's kind of sort of the direction that this is heading, and so that sort of branched into what the potential I think that the material could to move to. It's really and then trying to figure out what's really physically possible in a certain amount of time. What's feasible, and how do we get a model of this, and then just go with it. That I have I'm a kind of a lone wolf.
Sure.
I don't have children, or I'm not married, or any of those kind of things, and I live by myself. And so that's what are you doing I've been this way for my whole life, pretty much. I spent a lot of time alone anyway. grown up. So to me, having to be by myself, like on this capacity, was not such a huge adjustment, like to everybody else. You know, for
You've already trained yourself for this.
I found it actually. I got kind of a kick out of watching everybody, you know, freak out, because you know, it was a moment where everyone kind of had to sit and look at themselves, you know, and see, actually, can I enjoy myself as a, you know, am I cool with myself? Am I my best friend? Am I, you know, and that for me was not a big deal, you know. It's been a very abundant time for me, certainly in my own. I have, like, I'm a huge animal advocate, and I probably know that already.
Yeah.
And so I acquired not one but three new animals in this time frame. And so you know, I have now a really awesome, you know, collection of cats, which are really cool. So I'm not you know, a cat lady or whatever, but each one of them is
send me pictures. I love cats.
They're really, all of them are funny and smart, and really smart. And they were the fort where I'm stationed, you know, has had a problem. You know, they have animal control. You know, I see those vehicles patrolling all over the place. They're particularly hard on dogs. You know, if they see a just stray or an uncollared dog in a front yard, they put a summons in your door or something like that in this location.
Wow.
So yeah, I came across two kittens that were left in a carrier in front of the fort and blew my mind. And then this other guy, you know, he's a lion, first male cat I've ever had, and he's huge. Yeah.
Wow.
He came up to me coming out of the car.
Yeah.
And just was like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Hey, I hadn't seen you here. What's up?" And he looked hungry, so I went inside and I grabbed a can of sardines I had, you know, just random can of sardines and put them out.
Yeah.
And he kept coming up to me every day, you know, and he would wait outside for me to show up, wait for me to drive up in the car, wait outside the studio for me to come out. And, you know, and I just was like, you know, when the fires came, there was a time where you couldn't see the sky. It was like a nuclear.
I remember. I
right?
remember. Yeah.
That's when Boulder Creek, my former home, I lived there, like in Boulder Creek. I lived in Big Basin, burned down. I was like, that's gone. I have to get through that. Got to get that. Rivendell's gone. I have to get through that through my head. But I was driving down. I couldn't see, and they were like, people were turning around and coming back. But I was like, nope, I'm not going to leave him. And I remember that day, I saw him. He was all, you know, came out of the smoke, all tough and stuff. Flipped the back of my car up and cracked a can of food. He hopped in the hatch. We, you know, I shut it and like, that was it. Let's get out of here. And so I got him first, and then I got these two. And so they've been, you know, they're, you know, having a pet is always good if you have to spend time alone and stuff. But look, you know, the thing is, you know, I don't, you know, the whole idea of being by yourself and stuff is not an issue, man, because people that I've had the people that I have so much respect for and admiration for, and that I learn from, and that, you know, that inspire me like all the time, were known for that. You know, they didn't, they just, these are sacrifices that you make if you want to do things, you know, if you want to like roll the dice, so to speak. And that's kind of what this is all about, you know.
Well, plus, you know, just on the artistic end, if you're recording music, you know, and working on, you know, professional recordings, you're looking at spending hours and hours by yourself, mixing everything, and, you know,
pretty much it.
Yeah. Now, I discovered about myself, a friend of mine pointed this out, that I'm not an introvert, but an ambivert. You know, meaning that I like to mingle, but I'm very picky about who I mingle with. You know what I mean? You know, just, you know, it's a nice way of saying I don't suffer fools gladly, or I hope not. You know, but
yeah, you know,
yeah, but you know, for me, and again, you know, I wish I had more your mindset about being okay being by myself. You know, most of the time I am. 2020 was a really hard year to get through with everything, because at the very beginning, the Utah was getting reconstructed for earthquake safety or whatnot, and then by the time that was going to reopen, then all of a sudden we had the pandemic and the lockdown and all that.
Yeah.
And you know, just whatever side of the fence you're on about COVID or whatever, life has completely changed. Human interaction has completely changed. And one thing that really depressed me was the fact that when it came to ideas for songs, for music, you know, I wrote a grand total of 2 songs last year, and everything else was just working on covers. You know, we had a third song that I had written, you know, sometime before, and we did that on the EP. But you know, the truth of the matter is, I didn't want to think about anything. I didn't want to think about all this to the extent of writing a song.
Yep.
Because there's something that people don't think about when they write a song, and I'm wondering if you've ever thought about this. You know, there's the idea that certain songs are universal. Like, okay, blues music is very universal because many people can relate to it. The themes that it talks about, almost everyone's been there. Everyone can understand that. I've had the pleasure of writing some songs that I wasn't sure about, but then I later find out, oh no, that spoke to me because I'm going through that same thing. And so there's a therapeutic note to it. On the other hand, sometimes you write a song, and even if other people relate to it, you're kind of reliving a dark moment of your life over and over again for the purpose of the song. You know, and so I kind of thought about that in context of writing about what was going on in 2020, you know, and you know, thankfully I wrote one sort of, you know, dark but imaginary song, and then another more happy upbeat song. But that was really the extent that I wanted to think about things. I just really wanted to focus on doing cover songs and doing other stuff. And then you mentioned the fires. I got one of my guitars in the mail the day that the sky was orange.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember waking up that day thinking I must have woken up too early. And no, it's like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, but we got like a dark red sky,
Uh-huh.
you know, like Mordor, or like, you know, some crisis event in DC Comics or something, you know.
Yeah.
And then my mother lives in Oregon. Her sky was black.
Yeah, that's
You know.
hard to.
So
I had flashbacks. You know, I had flashbacks, and so seeing that stuff, you know, like
but just all of that, and then the racial violence after the George Floyd thing, and it just, you know, when that happened, I remember thinking to myself, my God, isn't the pandemic enough?
yeah,
You know, what's this crap all about? You know, now we got to deal with this again, and you know.
yeah. Well,
So it was, you know, just from my, it was just too much to think about and to take in,
yeah,
you know, and you know, I bring this all up because I want to add, you know, you're one of the artists I'm really grateful for, because your music, if anything, sparks me and makes me think, okay, I want to go to the next level with my own stuff, because you know, you, I don't know how to say it. You push a lot of creative boundaries, and I've always loved that about you. I always loved, you know, one of my favorite memories of you at the Utah was, I think it was the first feature I saw of yours. I don't know if it was your first feature, but I remember the second half of it. You were doing songs from Pink Floyd, The Wall. And for those of you who've never been to the Hotel Utah, there's this, you know, stage area and such, and there's a bar in the other room, and then there's like a balcony area and a what Brendan called a frontgany, but you know, seating down there.
mm,
And I remember a friend of mine and I are in the balcony when you were doing excerpts from Pink Floyd, and of course, you'll notice that Pink Floyd is probably one of the most quotable bands of all time. You know, because we're up there yelling like, "You, yes, you, stand still, laddie." Or, "If you don't eat your meat, you can't have any pudding. How can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat?" I mean, I wonder if Roger Waters knew that people were going to quote that to death for years to come. You know.
yeah, the auditory meme and stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean that's uh, I think, you know, again, if you look at like this, it's terrible, but the metrics of streaming right now, and you look at the what was happening, and you have to go back a few months, but there was a huge binge on like, and I was really grateful myself to see him come out and do a video in the stairwell. Paul Simon came out and started sung The Boxer, and I started tearing up.
Wow.
You know, I like that really took me to to being a little kid again, you know. And what he was doing, like a lot of these people, was he was people were binging on comfort, on trying to feel better because they were afraid, you know. They were obviously very uncomfortable, and so he was playing the role that was necessary. He was saying, okay, man, relax, we're going to be okay, you know, we're going to, you know, this is a scary moment and forever for a lot of people, and and I just loved him finally coming out and doing something, because, I was like, oh, he's taking me back, and people were going back. People were going back to listening, wherever their back was. There was a huge surge in streams for that music, not for new music, not for anything.
Yeah.
And so to me, it makes complete sense that you would do a bunch of covers, because you're honoring that music. It makes you feel better, and
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's, to me, the songs I do are always relevant. And by the way, you mentioned Paul Simon. One thing that's really sparked me in a good way is going on YouTube and seeing the socially distanced music videos, in particularly of the Doobie Brothers. They did 2 of them. They did one called Listen to the Music, and they did one of Black Water. And Black Water, if you watch the social distance version, it's so cool, because you see their children and their grandchildren dancing, singing, I want to hear some funky Dixie Lambert and Mama come and take me. And it brings tears to my eyes, man. It really, really does, because you're seeing, wow, through all this, I'm seeing happiness again.
Oh, I know. Oh, I won't lie. I mean, I binge watched, like, I had my stuff, man. I mean, just as much as you talk about these records, you asked me what the big 5 was,
Sure. Yeah.
It's not necessarily the big 5 in terms of records. It's producers that I follow, engineers.
Okay.
I have engineers that I listen to just because of what they make, not because of who the artist is.
Yeah.
And, but engineers, moods, just anything that captures that feeling. So I was listening to certain engineers like Ted Templeman. I went back and listened to all his stuff.
Yeah.
And then I went and listened to, oh man, I went and I watched like Bugs Bunny a zillion times. I watched, any comedian now that would be outlawed. I made sure, I got a nice big fat, that was Richard Pryor. I went and listened to all the stuff that, of course, Carlin, he's my, I put him, somebody asked me to do that silly game they play on Facebook of the many millions of silly games where I challenge somebody to name 10 records that, Well, my second or third record I put up was Occupation Fool, which is, a Grammy winning record. And it talks about the 7 dirty words you can't say on TV, and which became this incomplete list. He just went to town on all the words you can't say on TV, which is so funny. And it's unbelievably like forward thinking of this person, of him to do that, thinking about now. Okay. And that was really, everybody went home, literally went home. Everybody was stuck at home. And those that were home that didn't have anybody, went home to what their home is. They went to their personal home. They went, listened to records they haven't heard in a long time. They put on cartoons, or they did stuff that made them feel safe. And most of the time when people feel safe, it's when they're kids, because they got their parents watching out, most of people, I'm not saying everybody. And so a lot of people went to childhood music, which makes complete sense. A lot of people were reduced to a childlike behavior or childish behavior. We might say, people are, you've got these, you're being pushed, and you're closed up in the confined area for a long period of time, and you've discovered, wow, I'm not as emotionally mature as I thought I was. I'm actually, there's a lot of underdeveloped stuff in me that I need to look at, I need to address. And it's been as hard it's been hard for a lot of people, and deadly for a lot of people, sadly, and for families who have suffered. It's been a major light, I think, on everyone. It's been in terms of their person and about self reflection. I think it's been immense in that regard, and it's going to have there's going to be significant consequences, unfortunately, but. That's where we're at, but I'm not surprised, man. And you shouldn't feel like, I only wrote 2 songs and stuff, man. It takes, Sev says this too. I bring her up again. She says, what is it?
I like Sev.
Drops make a lake,
a good friend,
a million drops make a lake, or something like that. That's what they say in Turkey. Yeah. And, so all the good stuff, the stuff that's really going to stick in anything you do, man, you know, is the stuff that you got to really feel it.
Well, it's also, you know, it served a couple purposes for me because, first of all, I like the challenge of certain songs. You know, like you know that I'm a big Stevie Wonder fan through and through.
Hell yeah.
1 month last year, he was going to turn 70, and around May, and so I basically took it upon myself to just spend like at least 2 months. You know, I already knew like one or two Stevie songs, but to spend 2 months like learning and just deeply devouring Stevie Wonder songs. And there's a process that happens too, and I've gone through this like learning George Harrison's music. Is in some cases I fall in love with the song all over again because I'm taking it in more detail. I'm taking in the melodies and the chords and saying like, oh, this fits the mood so perfectly. And then the words. You know, my first lyricist that I really paid attention to, the first time I looked at sheet music and really paid attention to lyrics was with Elton John, with the lyricist Bernie Taupin. And just some of the imagery, like in "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road," hunting the horny black toad, just it was just incredible imagery that only those guys could create. And same thing with Stevie Wonder, and and learning Stevie's songs, immersing myself in his music and his thoughts and ideas, I found kind of changed my perspective quite a bit and made me realize I wish I could be more kind and loving like he is. I wish I didn't have it just kind of led me to another thought. Like I wish I didn't have some of my cynicism, some of it, because I do think I appreciate being a cynic. I mean, there's that old line. I think George Carlin even quoted it: "You scratch a cynic, you get a disappointed idealist." Well, that's what I've been most of my life.
Well, comedians too, man, are cynics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But studying these songs, first of all, in some cases it makes me a little bit of a better player. It gives me some more knowledge of different ideas I can do. And yeah, I get to revisit what these songs meant, the meanings, the words, the melodies, and realize how much I relate to it, how universal it really is, and why these songs worked, and closing out, I just want to say that you and I have been friends for a very long time. I'm very grateful for that. You've been one of the you've been a beacon of light for me in many ways.
Oh man, that's awfully nice.
Over the years at the Utah, but also just with our different musical endeavors. And what can I say? I love Vigilis. I love this. I love the album. I love that I'm finally able to grasp recordings like archival footage, archives, if you like, of Vigilis that I can listen to again and again, and that the world can listen to again and again. And I really appreciate your artistry, brother, and I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Well, I appreciate your friendship, and I look forward to everything that's coming our way, brother. It's.
I look forward to us taking them goddamn masks off and going to an actual open mic or show again. That's why I took the damn vaccine. That's why everybody said, "Oh, it's got terrible side effects. It's gonna do this and that." Like, look, I don't give a shit. I want that fucking card. What's easier to wear, the mask or the card? Okay.
I know. It's rough, man. Yeah, well, you can control what you can control. What do you have control over? That's it. And
yeah.
Again, I'll be real quick. It blows my mind. One of the things that, the lockdown and the mental craziness that kind of happened was I really noticed that there seemed to be this massive need. I saw, not everyone, but I saw a lot of people almost in a way make this choice about going for the dopamine hit to their ego. About being right about something over their friends.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That really broke my heart. And, that's the cynic, man. And that's what builds the cynic. So, what I would love to see is just people forget about that stuff. You don't need to be right. You don't need to have, let it go, man. Everyone's different. People don't share, but aren't going to always share the same opinion. And, it's fine. That's fine. That's what makes things interesting. If everybody has to follow one set of rules, then we're in trouble. So,
I have friends and family.
Love your friends and love your family.
I have friends and family on all sides
Yeah.
of the political, religious, whatever you want divide. There are
Yeah.
there are some theological arguments that I'm just more fascinated by. I don't really have a leg in it
Yeah.
per se, but
Yeah.
but I'm just kind of fascinated by it. But when it
Yeah.
comes to political arguments, and again, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think social media has actually made that worse.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
you've got one
Nailed
side
it.
which is out and out racist and really defending the racism or prejudice, but then you have another side more on the left, which is being woke and being and I hate to use woke that way, but being woke and being angry and fearful of people that might be racist. They're not, but they might be. And a lot of it is, they're not taking stuff into context.
We got extremes. That's what we got.
The extremes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I've had this conversation with a lot of my close friends.
Yeah.
When it comes to extremes, when I had my friend Jane Doe last week, when I
Yeah.
got to talk to them.
Yeah. It's a cool guest.
Oh, very, very cool. Very, very cool. And it was good to get to know a newer friend. But, before doing the interview, I asked them, I know you identify as gender fluid. Can we talk about that? I would, and my purpose is not to be dirty, but to say, I want to educate myself about this, but also if anybody else is listening or watching, maybe further their knowledge, because part of, a lot of prejudice, a lot of racism, a lot of that comes from just a lack of knowledge, just, preconceived notions. And what you want to do if you're a true intellect is you want to get rid of those preconceived notions. I realize that I'm not like those other people, but, I'm not transgender. I'm not this, I'm not that, but I would rather learn more about them because they're my friends. And, we have a mutual friend, Dr. Dream. Another
recently,
buddy of ours
man,
from
saw
the
Dr.
Utah
Dream
days.
on a Zoom talk.
Yeah,
I was like, cool. I haven't seen that in a long time.
She's been a dear friend of mine for a long time. But of course, she's trans, and and is very vocal about that. But I remember being on the bus with her one night and just saying to her, I want to live in a world like, I recognize that being transgender, being this, being that is part of who you are. But I'm more interested in what Ray Charles used to call the soul note.
Hell yeah, man.
You get to know the person inside. That's what I want. I want to know the person. I want to know the individual, not the group.
Just sing and play, man. Forget about the rest. Just
absolutely, man.
Do your thing.
Yeah. So, one I keep thinking about questions, but we'll make this the last one. What do you think of the thought of true art is never finished, it's abandoned? How do you feel about that philosophy? Do you think that's true, or do you think that's bullshit?
True art is never finished, it's abandoned.
It's something I've heard a lot over the years. And
really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what are we talking about here? I'm going to extend this. Look at me extending it. We talking about an object, like a product of an art, or are we talking about artistry?
Okay, in our case, we're talking about songwriting. Now, I don't know how much it can apply to songwriting. I know that I've had the experience of writing certain songs where I knew in the back of my mind it wasn't done, but I was still performing it, and then realizing later on, like, you know what, this isn't done. I need to add this to it.
Yeah. Well, I think everything's I would say it's always a work in progress, because people do covers. I have a hidden cover. Yeah. Well, I do one cover. I have a couple of covers, but I have one actual recorded cover, which is hidden, which I'm going to probably end up redoing.
Is this the one I know about?
I think you do. I've done it a bunch of times, but
if it's the song I'm thinking about,
we're not going to say what it is.
No, I won't either. Okay. But I will say you're the first person I ever heard do that song in a unique way.
It's a different spin on it. Yeah.
Most everyone else will do the standard version, but your version is so
there you go. So that's what I'm getting at. It's really it's not finished, because it's just that it was the person's interpretation or experience at that very given moment, and so. But it's really hard for the observers to sort of grab that, because they have it. The problem is attachment makes it difficult for people to kind of grasp onto that. What was it again? True art is never finished, it's just abandoned. So it's harder for people to kind of hold on to that idea, because they're attached to what they got immediately, what initially brought them in. They form an attachment to it. So when an artist does something that they're familiar with, they're expecting, and they try to do something different, They're all up in arms because, oh, it's not what you used to hug me a certain way or whatever. You pat my back a certain way. Now you're like pinching me, or you're doing, and it's getting different. And that's, it's like, well, you got to let him be an artist, So.
And that's something I didn't really think about, by the way, because I've always been extremely fascinated by different versions of songs. For example, I think of Clapton and how many different versions. There's been like 4 different versions of Layla over the years, and they're all good. But they're all extremely different. Another collection of albums I looked at was there's a gentleman by the name of DJ Spinna who collected all these oddball, more forgotten about cover versions of Stevie Wonder songs or songs that Stevie wrote for other artists.
Yeah.
That they released. And you're hearing such a wide variety of just different flavors of these same songs you've heard over and over again. That are just absolutely amazing. I will never forget hearing Ray Barretto's version of Pastime Paradise and how he just kind of, I don't know, he Latinized it. He just completely changed it up. But that's always been a thought to me. And then applying that idea with my own interpretations, I make sure that I'm doing an interpretation of the song. I don't ever want to be, I was in a band years ago where I played keyboards. It was a funk band, and the lead guy insisted that every cover we do needed to sound exactly like the recording.
Right.
We're doing Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. We got to have this, we got to have that.
Yeah.
And that just got so boring to me. I was just so bored. I mean, well, one, I wasn't a great funk player either, but it just got so boring to me to copy them. Like, I'd rather do my version.
It's fun to surprise people, right? Yeah.
And
exactly.
when I've seen Dream Theater live, they do different interpretations of some of their own material, and then every so often they'll throw in covers that they do their own thing with. I've listened to old albums of Jethro Tull or Gentle Giant, and their live shows, they'll change things up, sometimes quite dramatically, but you still, what's intriguing is when you can change up a song, but you still have recognizable things in it. That's a link back to his stuff are the vocal harmonies, because he was someone else who had perfect pitch, and his harmonies were so beautiful and so uniquely him. Same thing with Stevie Wonder, same thing as we were talking about with the Eagles or the Beatles or whomever have you. There are certain things that I want to hearken back to in my version that relate to the original artist, but beyond that, I want it to be my own thing. I want it to feel like I wrote it, because not for an ego, but just to say, like, it's also a note to the original artist. It's honoring them in a way that I think that I'm saying, I get it. I get this material, and this is how I interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, it moved you.
It's a better honor to them than to just be the tape recorder and say, hey, look what I can do.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's not about, you're not trying to be them, and you're not trying to necessarily outdo them. Although I will say Ava Cassidy certainly came close with her version of Over the Rainbow. I mean, that is absolutely, that I wept when I heard that one.
Wow.
I absolutely wept. And I mean, that is arguably that's up there, that rivals the original in my humble opinion. As far as
another, just before we end, another cover song that did that for me, the late Doc Watson. I don't know if you're familiar with Doc Watson.
Yeah, man.
World's fastest guitar picker, amazing artist. Look up his cover version of Nights in White Satin.
Okay.
And
I have not.
It's so different from the Moody Blues, but it will. I think it'll make you tear up. One thing I loved about Doc is he never phoned a song in. And he only really did covers. He didn't really like writing songs. He liked to do other songs and make them his own. But what was so amazing, and I see this in Willie Nelson as well, they never dial them in.
Yeah,
they completely feel these songs as if they were coming from themselves, and you can hear Doc's voice break up, with the emotion of the song. That's what gets me. It's so
I know, man. His shit is like he's untouchable, man. He's absolutely untouchable. Him. And what about Johnny Cash? Trent Reznor's song.
Oh, right? God.
He took Trent Reznor's song and made it better. I'm sorry.
No. I think even Trent Reznor agrees with you.
Yeah, I know he does. I'm being
yeah. Oh, man.
I'm regurgitating.
I can't. Yeah, I can't. That video, or just hearing the song, or even watching the video, makes you emotional.
It
really
man.
does. Oh my God. Oh my God, yes. My
Oh
God.
my God, Robert Smith would cry. You know,
Yeah.
absolutely. Man.
Oh yeah.
Good
No, I've heard
stuff.
some covers that are great. I've also heard some covers that are pretty terrible. Just to share what.
Let's not diss anybody,
No,
man.
no, 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 no. This is nobody we know. There's a deluxe edition of Eric Clapton's album Slow Hand, and this was a really good album, but it was one of the albums. You know, Clapton recently he made a documentary with the help of this director friend called Life in 12 Bars, and he's narrating it. And they kind of glossed over some of the 70s albums, but they did make mention of them. But it was a period where Clapton was drunk off his ass. You know, and there's a deluxe edition of Slow Hand, which is funny to me because on there he does a cover of Gordon Lightfoot's song "Looking at the Rain," and I swear when I hear it, Clapton sounds like he does not give a shit when he's singing it. It's the most unemotional version of the song. You know, I can almost implant my own lyrics in Clapton's version. Looking at the rain, what time's it again? Well, the bar closes at 2. Let's get some gin.
Man.
You know, but
he had some rough times, man. I mean, he's had rough times, that guy.
He did. But yeah, it's just different interpretations.
Yeah.
But Drew, I seriously wish you a lot of luck with
Thank you, man. You too.
Such a great piece of work. Again, I'm glad to see this. I'm glad to see these songs archived because this is one of those collections of songs that's been a long time waiting, and I couldn't have been the only one bugging you. Like, come on, I need a recording of your songs, man. God damn it! Not Brendan's recordings, but your recording. You know. But hey, buddy, it's been good catching up with you. This has been a longer episode than I've done, but I don't care. We had a great time chatting. We went into different things, and hey, I love you, man. Let's keep doing this. Keep surviving, so we can all do our live shows again. And for those of you watching at home, go on Bandcamp, check out Vigilis, check them out on YouTube. I've got some links in the Zoom below the Zoom in the description. Again, as I said last week, let's support all of our artists. I know that everyone's struggling right now. The entire world is struggling right now, but artists are struggling probably twice as much in some cases. So you really got to help them out because we want to keep art alive. No matter how good the world's going to be after this whole pandemic, after the whole chaos is over, you still need art. Art is an extra that makes the world beautiful. And I can say that about my friend's music just as strongly. And I thank everybody who listened and watched tonight. Again, Drew, thank you. And have a good evening, everyone. Cheers.